It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson.
Hey, we're back still with Goranka from Facebook, and hopefully you listened in to the first episode where I thought it was just enlightening to hear how Facebook is doing performance engineering, capacity management, how they are deploying new features fast to figure out even faster if they should forward, if they should keep these features or kill them or improve them, using New Zealand as the test bed, as many other companies do in the world as well. So we're still here because I still have a couple of questions. Brian and Goranka, you still with me?
Sure.
I'm still here.
Awesome. So one thing that I have two different topics that I would like to cover, just quickly pointing them out. Large-scale production monitoring. You said, obviously, you built your own tools because for that scale, it's hard to find vendors that actually build these tools. I would like to, on the one side, understand kind of what are the key metrics, what are the key things you look at, especially knowing that you have multiple layers of services. What are the things you look at in production so that we can all learn a little bit about the key metrics and what you do with them. And the second topic goes more towards some of the DevOps best practices. I know we heard a little bit about how you do rollouts and that you allow teams to do their own stuff, but I have a couple of more questions on like how DevOps kind of works at Facebook. The topic about the Dev Karma, I know one of your colleagues has been promoting that. But first, kind of going into performance monitoring in production. How do you get a handle, how do you get an overview of the performance of that many thousands of servers that run so many thousands and maybe millions of instances of services from different types of services that are related to each other and depending on each other? How does this, from a high level view, what are you looking at?
So actually, let me tell you first how we approach the problem, because I think we've done this right. And it doesn't happen very often. We mostly do things and then we kind of make them right. But this one we actually designed correctly from the beginning. So we have these three tiny little daemons that run on every single one of our machines in the data center. And the first daemon, the one that I like the most, is Dynalog. And that's because when I joined Facebook, that was the thing that I was working on. And it's this really tiny daemon that the only thing it does is it collects pretty much all of the performance data, everything that Linux kernel knows about on a per second basis, and exports it to the thrift port 1777, but doesn't matter, right? And so the only thing it does is it collects the data. So anything, for example, in /proc or if you know of the kernel data structure task stats, anything that is in there, Dynalog collects and just kind of sends it out. The other things can now subscribe to those, to those basically streams and can collect, consume them, do whatever they want. We have a second little daemon that just wakes up every 10 seconds and takes a top and puts it in a file, and that's the only thing it does. And the third one is really an interesting one, and it may shock people listening to this. We call it strobe light. And it basically wakes up, I'm not going to say how often, it kind of rolls a very large multi-sided, and a whole bunch of them dice. And then if the number comes up correctly, it crashes the machine and it grabs all of the stack traces of everything. And those three daemons are basically the bottom of our pyramid of monitoring. On top of that, each one does one thing and it does one thing well, right? So we've used the Unix principle, pick one thing to do and then do it well and you will be okay. And so on top of it, we have built different teams build things that they need. We have from different dashboards to alerts to, whatever you want to think about, we have. One of my colleagues on the capacity team has combined Dyналog with the data available in something that we call SMC, but basically it tells you which machines work together as groups, and has created these dashboards that tell us, how is the load distributed across those groups of machines, especially as they're distributed across the world and across our data center. And so we can easily see, hey, for this particular product, you seem to have a lot more load in, Oregon than you have in Sweden. Why? What is going on? What are your load balancing rules that are causing this to happen? On top of this,
it is also for dependency detection, obviously, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
But then a different engineer, and so the first one was built by Hao. The second one, Dennis, on the other hand, goes now into these subgroups of servers and basically does all of the automatic performance analysis that you could look at. So he looks at these servers automatically, and we call it Perf Doctor, and it just basically says, hey, here are the things that I have heuristically determined could potentially be problems for you, related to CPU, related to memory, related to maybe disk, related to flash, related to anything else. And so you come in there and you find, hey, you have a lot of LLC misses, or, oh my God, you have a lot of interrupts. An engineer wouldn't necessarily even think about, how do I figure out if I have a lot of interrupts? But you come to Perf Doctor, which is automatically tied to the other thing that we call Overwatch. And you now look at this and you go like, geez, I have these red things over here. What do they mean? And you can contact your capacity and performance engineer, and we can work on fixing those immediately. And in the process, a lot of my backend engineers like learning, some of this stuff, because not everybody can be an expert performance engineer.
Yeah, I like this a lot. Just to interrupt you quickly. So what we have a similar thing, right? I mean, obviously we built a performance monitoring product, and we within Dynatrace, we know how to use the product, but our many customers out there, they might not be performance experts. So what we actually did, we automated problem pattern detection. And yes. Same thing, right? We automatically say, hey, since the last deployment on these transactions, you have the N+1 query problem to the database, or you have a heavy asynchronous threading, and it increased by 50% since the last deployment. And then, so as you said, not everybody is an expert to A, understand all the patterns out there, and B, don't even know where to look for and how to analyze the data. So we just bubble it up. I like Perf Doctor. Yeah, that's a nice one. Yeah.
Cool. I think Dennis did a phenomenal job with it. It's a really fantastic tool, and he's still adding features to it. Think about it. Like if you have Flash, right? Flash has flash endurance associated with it. So, if I'm an engineer and I'm running a service and I have, a whole bunch of servers with Flash in there, I don't necessarily have to be an expert on when is this Flash going to run out of its write cycles and stuff? Why would I have to worry about that? Because, hey, are you going to also make me worry about, exactly how my NICs are behaving and so on? You can't. You cannot today require, an engineer and have them move fast, right? Because keep in mind that the rule is move fast. And so what we do is we provide all of these tools that allow it, for people to look at what we think is wrong. And then, what you will find out, not every engineer is interested in learning all this stuff, but typically, one or two per team will jump in and say, well, what does this mean? Why are you saying this? Like, what's this LLC thing? Why, you're telling me use huge pages. I don't even know what are you talking about? And those are the ones that you sit down and you explain, hey, and so here's how this works. And now compile it this way and see what you get. Or, if you switch to the later version of the compiler, you could potentially get this win or that win. And, as I said, not every engineer will be excited about it as much as we are, but, all you need is one or two. And, and you move kind of that stuff upstream, and people start monitoring and tracking their own stuff. It works really, really well.
So it's kind of like you provide performance engineering service as a service.
Correct. But we're also very lucky, right? To answer your second question, the one that you said you wanted to discuss, we have a class of engineers that we call production engineers. I think in the industry, they are really commonly called service reliability engineers, SREs. I think our guys do more than just service reliability. So we like calling them product or production engineers. And those are the engineers who both know the code and are system administrators and, are shrinks on the other side and know how to deal with people. And so they're kind of really rare, hard to find. And I love working with them because in general, they are the people who every large team of developers will have a subset of production engineers dedicated to just sort of working with them and helping them, maintain the product, deploy the changes. They will try and catch things early on. And I tend to work very, very closely with them. They are like, if a production engineer comes to me and says, look, I'm in real trouble and I need, X machines, most of the time, I don't even question it. I will just do what they ask me to do. If a developer comes to me and says, I'm in a real trouble and I need X machines, most of the time I just laugh, right? It's like, because I know, it's like, come on, you don't even know what you're talking about, right? So the big difference is, because, hey, like any other company, you try to hire smart people. Smart people will look for easy solutions. If that weren't the case, we'd still be living in caves, right? And so a smart developer will look at the problem and say, you know what, I need more servers. That's the easy thing for them. A production engineer, on the other hand, has far more of a conflict of interest. If they have more machines to manage, that increases the difficulty in their job. And so they have vested interest in actually analyzing the situation and saying, do I really need those additional servers? Or could I just recompile this in a different way and get the benefits of this or that? And so that's why I tend to trust production engineers by default. And I tend to not trust developers by default. Mm-hmm. And by the way, my teams know that, right? We kind of joke about it, and that's perfectly okay.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So the Dynalog, then the ATOP, mm-hmm. the strobe light, the Perf Doctor, you mentioned Overwatch. That means these are all there to collect data. Now, if you're responsible for this large infrastructure, when do your alarm clocks go off?
So luckily, the way we look at capacity should never be an emergency, right? I even have a sign on the desk that says, your lack of planning is not my emergency. We monitor all of these things. We very closely monitor, especially large services to see how they're behaving, and so that we can jump in and fix things. But, occasionally things will happen in the world that will cause alarms for us, right? In, I think, 2012, don't quote, but it was either 2011 or 2012, there was this huge flood in Thailand. And it turns out that in order to make a hard drive, there is this small piece of it that is only produced in Thailand. And so when all of the factories flooded, we kind of knew that at that point in time, there's going to be shortage of disks around the world. Right now, I think pretty much everybody knows that there is memory issues being on the field and stuff. And so when that happens, we basically have an ongoing alert of trying to figure out how do we mitigate the, something that is happening in the world. So what do we do? There is not going to be new disks to buy. So, hey, let's see what are the disks that we currently have in our machines. Can we extend the life of some of those? What state are they in? Can we reuse them in a different way? What can we buy on secondary markets? And it's one of those things where you get closely involved with all of the other teams. In that situation, I'm going to work very closely with my purchasing teams, the VMO, and try to find out what can we buy for how much, what can we cannibalize from our own fleet, right? So here are the machines that are coming to the end of life. Are there pieces there that I could reuse and stuff like that? And so in those situations, yeah, you kind of, you tend to work a little bit more. But none of us carry pagers, none of us on call in the sense that if the phone goes off at 3 a.m., you have to jump. We do have times, and the knows I've mentioned it, there are times when we will run experiments and take down a whole, what we call a region, a whole bunch of data centers in a particular area. But those are usually planned. So far, we haven't taken a whole region down accidentally, but those are usually planned. And at that point in time, while the experiment or while this large-scale test is going on, pretty much a subset of capacity and performance engineers will be kind of on call the whole time and available, monitoring, what is going on and, how will things finish. We've actually had one time when something like this happened accidentally, but we were prepared, right? If you remember Hurricane Sandy.
Oh, yeah.
So Hurricane Sandy ended up ripping up a lot of cables between Europe and the U.S. And pro tip and sort of a plug for an ex-colleague of mine, Carlos Bueno wrote a phenomenal blog post about, where the cables go and compared the current layout of all the cables that we use for internet communication with the trade routes that the ships used to take, 100 to 200 years ago. And you basically get one-to-one match of all of these things, which is kind of pretty fascinating if you think about it. Right. And so the cables are all coming to the U.S. from Europe, basically kind of in one or two places. And Sandy went through one of those and ripped the cables and kind of left one of our regions without, or kind of left Europe really disconnected from the rest of the stuff. And so at that point in time, you sit down and you see what you can do. How do you reroute traffic in different ways? I have a truly phenomenal networking team. Love those guys. And so we managed to get through everything without any problems. And of course, we knew that Sandy was coming. We had a couple of days warning. And so we kind of analyzed what are the things that could be impacted. I have to admit, I don't know if anybody thought about the cables being pulled. I certainly didn't hear of somebody doing it. But we considered the situation that the storm shifts a little bit and takes out our whole slow data center in this region. And so we prepared for that. And then the rest of it just kind of followed through.
Wow. Hey, now quickly to my second topic. So for DevOps at Facebook. I mean, you mentioned that developers can basically, push code through fast. They encourage that. Now they, if I'm a developer, if I would start tomorrow, and what am I allowed to do? Am I already allowed to do changes that make it all the way to production? What are my safety nets and what are my responsibilities? That would be interesting.
Oh, absolutely. So when you start at Facebook as an engineer, you start in a boot camp. We're kind of an unusual company in the sense that when you join Facebook, you don't necessarily know which team you will work on because you get to make a pick. You decide who do you want to work with. So you want to work on newsfeed or on ads or on search, or is it Android that, is the stuff that you want to work on? But you get to spend 3 months, 6 to 8 weeks in boot camp. And during your boot camp time, you will end up working in all aspects of all of the code bases. To give you an example, I remember the first time I started and they gave me a couple of bugs. We have this separate class of bugs that we call boot camp bugs, which are relatively simple. So boot camper can fix it, but it requires you to get into the code base and sort of figure how things are working. And so I looked at my first bootcamp bug, and it was in the PHP code base. And so I went to my bootcamp mentor and I said, somebody made a mistake. You see, I'm a performance person. I'm a C++ person. I mean, there is no way you want me writing in PHP, right? It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, I despise PHP. Like, there isn't enough words in the English language to express my distaste for PHP. And, and my bootcamp mentor said, and that is exactly why we gave you this. You'll see, you don't have only one, you have multiple, because you still need to know what the code base looks like. And, we just wanted to make you cry, right? And he wasn't thinking about me programming in PHP. He was talking about me looking at what the code looks like, right? And so my code change ended up landing in production within a week. And hopefully the changes are small and you're not going to take the site down. During that time, what would happen is, we would on Friday or on Saturday, the code would be pushed so that we, Facebook employees, would basically end up using this new Facebook. And then on Tuesday, so we use it for a couple of days, and then on Tuesdays it would be pushed to everybody. Mm-hmm. Again, this was like 6 years ago. And so it happened frequently that, you'd log on Saturday or on Sunday, and there would be like, hey, is the top bar missing for everybody, right? Or something like that. And then you fix it before it goes into, that was the whole point. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you would, within the first 6 to 8 weeks, you're going through boot camp, you're getting, in the first part of that, you get a random set of bugs to work on that will probably toss you into front-end code and into some back-end code. And then after about 3 to 4 weeks, you kind of decide, I'm thinking I would like to work between 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 projects. And at that point in time, you start self-selecting bugs from those projects that allow you to, to kind of spend more time in that code base and you work closer with those teams. And at the end of your bootcamp time, you decide, hey, I would like to work on newsfeed, and the newsfeed team says like, yeah, you seem okay, you've done okay, and we collaborate well with you, and so you move to the newsfeed team. Or likewise, I would really like to, I don't know, work on Instagram. And join Facebook, yeah, but Instagram is where it's at for me. I'm for some reason in love with Django and Python, and this is where I want to go. And so you join Instagram team, but you have that choice, but you start pushing things into production immediately. We find that it is amazing how quickly people lose the fear. If you push a small thing and you see how the whole thing works, you suddenly sort of relax a little bit, because you realize, there are other people looking over these things. And so if I make a mistake, most likely, or hopefully it's going to be caught during the code review. If not, it's going to be caught along the way through the pipeline. And I think it frees people up a little bit to be freer, because interestingly enough, and I actually completely agree with this, the worst thing you can have is when people are afraid to do things and to make mistakes. That paralyzes you, and you just make no progress.
Mm-hmm. That's very similar in the vein of an artist, right? Trying to create something is all the self-censorship and self-doubt of putting something out or continuing with a project because of that fear of what's going to happen when it goes out. And in a similar way with this, you have the idea of, I can put this out without fear because I know there are checks and balances, and probably gives developers a freer rein to create or experiment with new ideas that they might not have if they had to think of it all the way through.
Absolutely. And, I think the second thing with that is the culture. And I hope every coding, programming, engineering shop takes this very seriously, is never blame the person that made a mistake. It isn't that person's fault. If somebody brings all of Facebook down accidentally on the inside, that's not that person's fault. That's the fault of all of us who have been there for years and have not realized that they have created a system that has this one single point of failure that can take it down. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the person ran into it, that's not that person's fault. That's our fault, right? Don't blame the person that has just been there for 3 weeks. I mean, what the heck does he know, or she? Yeah. Right? It's like,
yeah. So, and if you are, what I would like also to understand, if I'm pushing my feature out, then am I responsible? Am I responsible to keep monitoring it in production from is it successful? Is it not successful? Is it performing well? Or is this a service that you deliver? Or is it something that I have to then sit down and say, okay, I believe this is crap, nobody needs it, and then rip it out? Or I believe, this is really cool, but now I need your help to make it more efficient? How does this work?
Have you ever met a developer who pushed something out and said, I think this is crap and we should pull it out? No, never happens, right? So one of the things that I do before they push out, I ask for sort of written or verbal commitment on what is considered a success. Because it is interesting how people will say, well, if people like it, then we'll have it stick around. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? I need measurable things. So, you can tell me, okay, if, increase of, 10% more people using the feature is a success, okay, because I don't know, I can't judge that, but I want that number up front. And what's failure? If it's less than 3% people using the feature, is that a failure? You have to commit to that before we push the product. And because otherwise, you push the product, and no matter what the numbers are, the developer will declare it a success, and I will look at it and go like, well, this should have been better, right? And so it's nice to have that agreement up front. And that doesn't mean that once the things are pushed, and let's assume that you end up with these 2.5%. And so it looks like failure, but there are other indicators that show that if you only change this thing here and that thing there, it could be a lot better. Well, fine, let's go ahead and do that. But you have to agree on how you will evaluate, not how you will measure. That goes without saying. We all have to agree on how we measure things. But the question is, what do we call success? What do we call failure? What is in between? And a lot of times when I find people arguing and disagreeing, it's because they have very different standards on, what we mean is very good. And if you performance, typical requirement performances, it has to perform well, and it has to be secure. Well, what the heck does that mean? And so you need to define those things.
One last thing, because I remember you sent me a video link after we met in New Zealand. One of your colleagues, he came up. I mean, he's famous, it seems, within
Chuck.
Facebook.
Yeah,
Chuck, yeah. One thing that I liked, what he talked about, is the dev karma, or the karma of a developer.
The karma, yeah.
So if I understood this correctly, then in general, you first start trusting developers that they do a good job, but then they have to prove over and over again that they are not misusing that trust. Meaning,
Correct.
They have a high karma, but that karma gets lowered in case they do something stupid, right?
Correct. So Chuck was head of release engineering, right? And so, he has a team of people working for him. He likes those people. They're his people. He doesn't show it much, but he does like them. And so, you developer, and you push a crappy code out, and you walk out. And now these guys have to stay till midnight or till 1 o'clock. Again, this is a long time ago when we were pushing the code changes. Yeah, we've just lost some karma points. From that point on, they have full right to say, you don't get to add anything to the trunk or to build without being there. The rule used to be, is when your code is being pushed and, when your changes are going out, you stick around to support your changes. And if you don't do that, you will lose some karma points. I joke, I do something similar with performance. You can occasionally swindle me out of a few machines, but once you do that, I will remember it. And the next time I will make you work that much harder for sort of legitimate requests. And I always joke because like anywhere else, most of the developers tend to be men, right? And I always joke with them and I say, like, look, I'm a woman and I'm from the Balkans. I will remember this 500 years ago from now, sorry. And in our 10th life, I will hold you accountable for this. So just don't, just do the right thing and we'll all be happy. And so part of our culture is it isn't top down. We sort of self-police culture of engineers. Like, I'm not a manager, I'm an individual contributor, but I have this power to sort of jokingly talk with people and say, just don't do this, because I will hold you accountable, and I do hold a grudge. And people know that. And so it's so much better than if, I have to go to my manager who goes to his manager and so on, and then comes down and says, well, this person is doing something that, person over there doesn't think is right. Very direct, machines are mine. I'm giving them to you because I think it's the right thing for Facebook. But if I find out that you are doing something that isn't okay and doing it intentionally, I'm less likely to trust you in the future. I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Brian, I think this was both sessions extremely enlightful.
Yeah.
Just amazing to hear how companies like Facebook deal with the way we should deliver and build software. And I think hopefully some very good thoughts and ideas that spark with our listeners. And Yeah, if I want to sum it up for this episode, O'Brien, do you want to take a stab at it, or shall I?
No, you're the summer.
Summer.
Yeah. Huh? Go on.
The summarizer.
I'm the summarizer.
The summarizer, exactly. I'll be back. What I really liked about this episode, the two areas we discussed, the way you monitor large-scale environments. You said you built your own purpose-built tools. Do one thing well and do it really well. The Dynolog, the taking the snapshots every 10 seconds, the AW strobe light, building automatic detection into your monitoring system, because not everybody is a performance expert. So bubble it up. That's great. So understanding a little bit about how monitoring works at large scale. And then what I just loved to hear is how developers get onboarded, how code is getting pushed through, that you have the boot camp where you start with bug fixing, getting familiar with the code baseline, making your first production changes. You said within the week you have your first production change, and eventually figuring out in which area you really want to work at. And by that time, after the boot camp, after 6 to 8 weeks, you already got to know that team, and they can then basically hopefully agree with you that you would be a good addition to that team. And I guess the biggest thing that I take away from this is what is success? Because success means something different for different people. And so if a development team comes up with a new idea, everybody needs to have an agreement on how we can actually measure success later on, so we can decide if it's a good thing to move forward or not. And this is just, I like this. And having it as a written statement to hold people accountable for later on as well, just phenomenal. Yeah. Yeah.
And Andy, building off of that success thing, I read today, there was are you familiar with the actor Shia LaBeouf? He was in the Transformers movies and some of those others.
Yeah, familiar with the name.
He had some movie and it opened in one theater in England and sold one ticket. And so,
wow.
Yeah. And, one of the excuses, I should say, made in the article was that, it was also released direct to, streaming and all that at the same time. So that might have, but, just the definitions of success, selling one ticket, just tying that in. And I'm not going to try to re-summarize, anything you said. I think this is probably one of the episodes that I'm going to go back while I'm editing it and really, really listen to, because there's so much in here, just so much to think about and chew on mentally. But in a little bit of a humorous way, what I'll say is the one thing I got out of it is that I'm very glad to hear that employees at Facebook do not wear pagers. Because if they're using pagers, yeah, they'd be. So I know it's a term of speech, but yeah,
it's a figure of speech, but a long time ago. That must have been in
right.
2010 or so. One of our employees played a prank on one of the sites that used to try always and come and report early on Facebook, and so he basically pegged their knew all of their IP addresses, and what would happen is when they would try to come, they would get this information that Facebook is trying to release a new fax product and so on. And so they ended up actually reporting on it, which of course Evan was more than thrilled with and stuff like that. And then eventually they realized what was going on. But yeah, pagers, fax, I'm very old.
Anyhow, definitely would love to just thank you so much for joining today. Really, really enlightening. It's always been a mystery. There's always those clouds of mysteries behind, the other, companies like Facebook and the other large behemoths that are dealing with such large user bases and such large server footprints and services. Like, how does it all get done? And getting to peel. And I know there's a lot of tech blogs and out there, but getting to speak and hear it in plain terms is just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So really huge thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for inviting me, and I hope that the conversation ends up being useful to your listeners.
Me too. It's useful to me too as well. Yeah. can't say thanks enough. Andy, anything else, or Goranka, any last words? Are there any conferences or anything you'd like to plug of any appearances coming up?
No, not really. I tend to do 1 or 2 events a year because it can just get overwhelming, and I still have a lot of work that needs to be done at Facebook, so nothing to plug.
All right. Andy, anything to plug?
When is this airing? Do we have an idea?
I think sometime this month.
Okay. Well, I will be on the West Coast in 2 weeks at the AWS Summit.
So this month being April. Yeah, sorry.
The month being April, exactly. And the big plug that I want to make is in June, actually June 1st, we have our Dev1 conference. It's a Dynatrace developers conference for developers in operations. So it actually came out of some feedback that we received internally, where developers, or especially developers within Dynatrace, wanted to get more educated on what's happening out there. And so we actually organized this one-day event, like a DevOps day, but we call it Dev1, so dev1.at. And we also open it up to the public now. So in case anybody is in Linz, Austria, or somewhere in the area, check it out, dev1.at. And actually, I will be giving. I was asked to do the keynote there, and I would like to repeat, Goranka, some of the things that you've publicly stated, because one of the things they asked me. Because people, what they ask me is like, how does DevOps work in big organizations? How does software engineering work in big organizations? And I think you just brought up some really great concepts that I would like to rephrase. So thanks again for helping me with my keynote.
No problem.
Yeah. And you'll also be performing at the Sands Casino, right, with Carrot Top?
I'll send you the video. I'll send you, Goranka, I'll send you the video with me, with us on stage with Lederhosen and Dirndl.
Fantastic.
Yes. All right, and once again, any feedback anybody has, we'd love to hear any. You can reach us via Twitter at pure_DT, or you can always send us an email if you want to be old-fashioned, which is kind of funny, isn't it? At pureperformance@dynatrace.com. And thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.